Hey, how's it going, y'all? This is Benjamin React. It's my first video, so hey, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification, go ahead and leave a comment to the questions I'm gonna be asking, or whichever questions y'all feel like y'all want to ask me or based on the video. But yeah, so this video is gonna be on the infographic show. So this video is quite old, back in 2017. Is the European Union versus the United States of America. So everybody, we go ahead and start this video, and let's see what they have to offer us.
The world watched in wonder when in 1993 the European Union was officially formed. Questions abounded. Would the UK and France finally be able to live harmoniously in perpetuity? Would Germany and the rest of Europe finally form an unbreakable alliance? With a currency to rival that of the US and the combined military might of 28 different countries, the EU could easily be one of America's greatest trading partners or one of its most menacing foes. Although the American and European alliance is the strongest today than it's ever been, we thought it would be interesting to compare the military might of these two powerhouses and determine who would most likely win in a theoretical war in this episode of the infographic show, The European Union versus the United States of America. Although money isn't everything, the first major difference worth pointing out is military spending.
So that's
The
what
annual
they
defense
got
budget of the
me.
European
They messed up on money and everything. I mean, based on wars, based on if I'm a fight, you country to country. I mean, you gotta have money to spend on things for your military, for your personnel, for everything, for fighter jets, for tanks that you're gonna use, for the missiles that you're gonna be sending them over to the other side. So, I mean, you gotta have a big budget to compete.
Union, which still includes the UK even though they recently voted to Brexit, is $227 billion, or 3 times smaller than the
See, that's
United
back in
States' annual defense
2017,
budget.
664. That's nothing compared to what they're spending today in the 800s. So imagine what was then in 2017 compared to what's been spent now. I mean, it's quite a difference, $200 billion difference.
Of $664 billion. When it comes to manpower, the EU has a population of 743 million people, with 1.4 million being active military personnel and 1.7 million being reserve personnel. The United States has a population of 324 million people, with 1.4 million being active military personnel and
So what do you
1.1
think?
million
I
being
mean, let's
reserve
say a war
personnel.
does go out between European Union versus the United States. What do you think y'all gonna live at? Like, are y'all gonna stay in your country? Y'all gonna move to a different country? Feel free and drop that in the comments below. Let me know where y'all gonna be moving to or less. I mean, it's no, I mean, it's okay to stay put in your country. You never know where the missile's gonna be flying. So, hey, you never know.
With programs such as Sabre Strike, the 7th Army Training Command, and the Atlantic Resolve, it is safe to assume that the close connection between the US and the EU has resulted in reasonably similar training for the Army personnel of each country. In terms of land systems, the EU and the US are also similarly matched. The EU has 6,700 tanks, 48,971 AFVs, 2,312 SPGs, 3,492 towed artillery, and 1,069 MLRSs. The US, on the other hand, has a fleet of 8,848 tanks, 41,000 AFVs, 1,934 SPGs, 1,300 towed artillery, and 1,331 MLRSs. Despite the US having
See,
a
that's
larger
where
number
they
of ground
got
tanks,
things messed up at. See, the US got way more stuff. I mean, compared to a few items that's on this list. I mean, let's be clear. The US has way better 21st century like artilleries, armored fighter vehicles, self-propelled guns, tanks. It's all updated or brand new now. What the Soviets or they first used back then, or what Russia is using right now, the Soviet era tanks. Come on, like let's be real. If you're gonna fight in today's war, you got to use the newest things. You could dump all your old stuff into a war, but don't be mad when more people keep dying left and right.
Germany makes one of the top ranked tanks, the Leopard 2, which has been purchased in the hundreds by countries all over Europe. It should be noted that while the US has troops and missiles
A
stationed
Leopard
in
tank
Europe,
might be
there
good,
are
but
no
we got
European
the
army
Abrams
bases
tank.
in the US. This is an obvious advantage to the US, who could more easily bring the battle to European soil, keeping it away from the plants which manufacture American weapons,
Easy
and
turning
again
Europe
turning
to a
Europe
battleground. Come on, man. We know what we was doing when we was making all this goals way back like 100 years ago. Yeah, come here. Let's open up a base here. Let's open up a base there. They know what. United States know what they were doing.
into a war zone similar to World War II. Of the US missiles on European soil, the Aegis Ashore Missile Defense System, located in Romania, has recently gone online and is manned by 130 US sailors. This defense system is currently run by NATO, but in the case of a US EU war, it would become an ideal base for the US on European soil. With regard to air power, the US currently has a
Hey,
larger and
feel
more
free to
modern
drop in
air
that comment.
force
Why do y'all
with
think
13.
so there are so many U.S. bases out there in the world, man, compared to no other countries as a base here in the United States or in Canada or in Mexico? Like, if you think about it, U.S. has, I would say, what, 1,000 bases. Some may not be bases. Some may just be like or weapons depot or storage units, storage area where they got like you said, like probably 100 or a couple hundreds of army military personnel just guarding it.
1,444 aircraft, the most popular being the American made F 16 Fighting Falcon. The EU has less than half that, with 6,751 total aircraft, the most popular
Okay.
being the Eurofighter Typhoon. Since the US and the European Union are on two different continents, it's important to take a look at each country's naval power. The EU has a total of 61 submarines, 102 frigates, 21 destroyers, 39 corvettes, 167 mine warfare craft, and 210 patrol craft. The United States, on the other hand, has 75 submarines, 6 frigates, 62 destroyers, 0 corvettes, 11 mine warfare
Hey,
craft, and
don't
13
don't
patrol
look at them
craft.
numbers thinking that the United States is sweet for y'all, because again, U.S. has the biggest navy of them all compared to any other countries out there in the world. Like if you're looking at between European Union versus the U.S. and like what patrol craft, what two tanker versus 13. Again, it's all about them weapons. At the end of the day, when we sending them that guided missile at your ass, you gonna know what's coming at you. Or compared to the mine warcraft, I mean warfare craft ships or the corvettes or the destroyers. The destroyers that remind me of the what's the movie that's right. I can't remember, but yeah, it reminds me of that movie. But again, look at the submarine. We got nuclear power submarine compared to 61 of European Union. Again, I don't know if they have if they are integrated with a nuclear sub or are they something different.
The two seem pretty tied, however, the EU only has 8 aircraft carriers compared to the US's 19. In the unlikely scenario that nuclear weapons are used, the US has a stockpile of 6,800 nuclear warheads with 150 nuclear warheads located directly in Europe. Europe barely has 500 nuclear warheads of
See,
its
that's
own,
another
split
thing.
nearly
When
evenly
people try
between
to threat you with dropping a nuclear bomb at that fact, like why do it? I mean, if I have more than you and you got what 500. I'm just gonna be looking at you how dumb you are. Like, I might have really crushed this guy. Like, what's he doing? Should I drop 1,000 at his ass, or what should I do, y'all? Because I'm not just gonna drop a few. I'm dropping hundreds at a time, and feel free to go ahead and stop one. But again, that's why they got the what's that mad mutual assured destruction. Because I mean, you shoot one, I shoot 1,000 at you. Hey, feel free.
the UK and France. As we all know, a major component of this military assessment is fuel, since almost every ground vehicle, aircraft, and naval unit needs fuel in order to operate. The European Union produces only 1.7 million barrels of oil a day and consumes almost 8 times that each day. It also has 5.6 billion barrels of oil in reserve. The United States produces 9 million barrels of oil a day and consumes 19 million barrels daily, though it has
Hey, you
37
can't go
billion
anywhere without
barrels of oil.
fuel, right? I mean, your cars, our cars that we drive in today's society, we need fuel. Without fuel, we can't go anywhere. I would say the same thing goes for the military, with their aircraft that they have, with their tanks, with any other like crafts that they have that moves or flies. So basically, it all needs fuel at the end of the day, unless they have some groundbreaking technology that flies without fuel, or like what's that, like a nuclear fusion that flies, or nuclear, like whatever nuclear that flies in the air without needing to refuel. That would be nice. That probably reminds me of that one movie, the Avengers, when they got the aircraft carrier that was flying. I feel like that's something that might be true one day. I feel like the only one country that may be able to build that will be the United States.
Oil in reserve. It is safe to say both countries would need to rely on importing oil from other countries. The EU and the US share most of their allies, and it would be very interesting to see who allies with whom. As many will point out,
And
experience is
experience is a
also a
major
major
factor
factor
compared
when
to other countries, European Union. What wars have they really fought? Aside from what, World War II, the United States have been fighting wars for a long time. Over 100 years, over 200 years, fighting each other, fighting against other people, fighting against wars like a proxy war. We sending weapons to other countries that really needed a weapon. So hey, you never know nowadays.
assessing military prowess. The EU and the US have been involved in the same wars for the last decade. However, the US military exists as a unified entity, and the EU runs much of their
That's
military
not
on a
good.
country
Country
by
by
country
country is not good,
basis,
y'all.
making communication and tactical planning much more complicated. When it comes to the all seeing eyes from space, both the European Union and the United States run their own global navigation satellite systems. The US has GPS and the EU has Galileo. GPS used to have the capability to block civilian signals called selective availability. One of the main reasons the EU developed Galileo was due to its concern that the US could deny others access to
I mean, I
GPS during
would
political
too. If we're
disagreements.
gonna be fighting each other, why would I be sharing my resources with you? Like, we're at war now. That's it. I'm cutting you off. So basically, if I got, I mean, I'm saying what, 24 GPS satellites up there. Then again, who really knows the amount of GPS satellites or whatever goddamn satellites that they have up in space? 24 is not a real number, y'all. Compared to Galileo 18, I really don't believe that. Cause come on, 24, 18, no small number compared to how big space is.
The two
Or
came to a
let's refer
compromise, and
that
the
all
US
them
is now in
satellites
the
they be
process
sending up in there is literally at low Earth orbit. So it's not really in space, it's at low Earth orbit, y'all.
of replacing old GPS satellites with new ones that will not have selective availability enabled. So, who do you think would win the war, the US or the EU? Do you think there are factors we omitted that would make a difference? Is war between the EU
All
and
right,
the
so let's
US
answer that
even a
question, y'all. Feel
possibility?
free to go ahead and answer that question along, or leave a comment about that question on the comments below. So, what do you think will win the war in the U.S. or the EU? In my opinion, I may be biased about it, but I mean, my money's on the U.S. any day. I mean, hey, why won't you bet on the U.S.? If you bet on somebody else, or let's say some other country in the EU that talks big talks, but when it comes down to it, that backs off it in, they got countries in the EU that are like that acts tough, but when their weapons start flying over, they know what's they know what's really is going on, y'all. So do you think there are factors we omitted that will make a difference? Oh, big factors. I mean, it's all this stuff that weapons that we have compared to weapons that the EU have is difference. No comparable. It's war between the EU and the US, even a possibility. Of course, and you can never say no. I mean, World War II was just what, years ago? What, like 70 years ago? And when today's war, they got other countries fighting their neighbors, and other countries trying to act tough, but they, as we call it, a paper tiger. They talk the big talk, but when the real weapons is thrown at them, they back down because they have no, I would say, no credible fighters that they call that can be called upon.
Let us know in the comments. And if
Hey,
you
so
want to
thank
get
you
a
for
daily
watching this video.
comparison
Y'all
or
go ahead
fun
and leave
fact,
a comment, turn on the notification. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna be posting the link of this video to the description down below. So feel free to go ahead and support the channel and appreciate that.